Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coach Craig's Sports. We're going to be doing a special episode today, and this one's going to be a deeper dive into Dynasty. Did a couple of these last year with a couple of my buddies as well. That was from our Dynasty Contract League. Today, we're going to have a special guest on from a different league that we did, and it was I don't even know what you called this league, the Sons of Dynasty, one of the ones.
Yeah, end of days, Sons of Dynasty 4.0.
4.0. So you had a couple other ones like this beforehand.
Yeah, well, similar. They're all different, forms of. Each one's a little bit different, but this is the fourth Sons of Dynasty represented Dynasty League.
Yeah, so I guess first off, we'll start off by introducing yourself, who you are, anything that you want to let people know.
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter at Dan Brown NFL. You can also find me putting out work for Sons of Dynasty, and that's at Dynasty Sons, and kicking it with all the guys over there at True North. That's at True North FF and TrueNorthFF.com. Absolutely just love kicking it with the crew that I do on the usual. Coach, you being one of them. You and I pretty much chat on a daily basis at this point. So, getting into a league with you and getting to inside your head a little bit more than I do on a regular basis about these prospects. There's not many guys that I know that dive as deep into prospects that you do. So anytime I get a chance to come on here and talk football with you, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we're going to be going through the draft that we did do, that Sons of Dynasty 4.01. It was a little bit of an interesting league. I don't know how much you want to get into the scoring details, but 2 tight ends, 2 super flex spots. So there's a lot of different ways you could kind of go into this draft. I don't know if you had kind of a strategy going into it that you're trying to look at beforehand.
As most draft strategies, at first I'm assessing my position that I'm picking, and typically from there, towards the beginning, where I think I ended up in this draft, I just think about positional scarcity, and this was a single quarterback, but with a double super flex added on to it. So, can start up to 3 quarterbacks on a weekly basis, only must start 1 quarterback. But usually anytime you incorporate something like that, you can expect hot and heavy quarterback runs to jump ship. People want to capitalize on that positional advantage, especially everybody getting into a singular super flex leagues kind of gets to accelerate the value of the quarterbacks, and everybody's becoming aware to that. So now you add an additional super flex spot to the rotation, and instantly quarterbacks are far and away the most important position that you can really have in such a league. So, I like to stay water. I like to play the board. When everybody's zigging, I'm prone to zag. So that's kind of what I went into this draft with, and just kind of played the board as it came to me, looking for value. Typically in a dynasty startup, I'm not drafting to fill my starting roster. Even if I can't do that come week 1, that's okay with me, because typically I'm not drafting a full blown contender year 1. I'm more of a year 2, year 3 guy. And I love my wide receivers, so I don't like to spend big capital up on running backs typically, just because I've been burned, the shelf life, and the value fluctuations in the running back rooms. It almost seems like a yearly basis. The top 5 are getting a little bit of a shakeup. You got your bona fide studs 1, 2, and 3, sure, but outside of that, 5 through 15, you could make a case for just about any of these guys to swap around with where ECR has them going right now. So I actually went a little bit against the grain here. And I believe it was with my second pick. Pull the draft board up there if
I'll bring this one up, because I know you went Kyler Murray right off the bat.
Right.
Because most of the people pretty much took quarterbacks in round 1 besides Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor.
Right.
I was right before you, and I took Josh Allen myself.
And I would have taken Allen had you gone Murray. I can make a case for Prescott just as much as Murray, but coming off the injury and stuff, there's enough pause for me. Kyler Murray's still right up there with them discussion. It feels like a little bit less risk. I'm all in on the Cowboys offense as far as this year goes. I think their defense is going to be terrible again. And Dak and that offense. We've seen what they were capable of, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that this year. So, any of those quarterbacks, I would have been fine there with at the 103, but I was pretty content that I wanted to get a quarterback right here because, that kind of allows me to see what the board's going to do. If quarterbacks continue to run, which they indeed did, I'm prepared to pivot and lock up some top tier options at a different position. But by going ahead and getting that quarterback now, it kind of let me be flexible and not see, 14 quarterbacks go off the board before my second round pick came back around.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, like this was an interesting draft. And even with like the quarterbacks, you see some of these guys, they kind of float up towards those top quarterbacks in Dynasty. And then like the next year, they're down like 10 or 12. So there's a lot of fluctuation there too. I don't know if that factors in a lot for you or not.
Yeah. I really like the top 10 quarterbacks. And then right outside the top 10, really, it starts to get pretty hairy pretty quickly. And, there's other guys that I think that I don't mind, holding on to for this year. But as far as dynasty value and what you're going to be spending on them startup wise in the second round, I'm Jalen Hurts bandwagon guy. I love him. I've been pounding the drum for Jalen, and I still am right now. But he's got this year to really kind of prove it, or you best believe the Eagles his job's not secure. So while he went here in the middle of the second round, he could take a huge loss after this year and value wise. So that's a risk you're going to have to take. But one that I've taken several times already, and I've bought in several shares of Hurts. I am a believer in the talent. He's got the two things that I'm looking for, and that's some major rushing upside. Anytime I can lock in a quarterback with rushing upside, and you're getting him in the second round, really those top 5-6 guys are the ones that kind of give you that true rushing upside. And then you kind of start to see the pocket passers and Fields, Lance kind of coming off once again, rushing upside. So, and you'll notice right after Hurts is where it starts to go Stafford, Wentz, Rodgers, Mayfield. Most of the rushing upside is out the window at that point, and there's not going to be many guys down further than that will bring that to the table. Jalen Hurts also loves to throw the ball deep. While he doesn't necessarily possess what you're looking for an NFL real team quarterback, as far as, is he doing what PFF wants him to do as far as, staying in the pocket, getting rid of the ball on time? Not necessarily, but he's extending the plays and he's making fantasy football friendly plays down the field. And a combination of those two things and top 5 quarterback is definitely in the discussion for Jalen Hurts in 2021.
Yeah. And Jalen Hurts is a really interesting player too. Like even if you go back to like 2018 when he was starting at Alabama, and just the player that he was then compared to now, like how much he's grown as a passer is just ridiculous. Like he's pretty much somebody they were looking at as a running back prospect at that point in time for the NFL level. And now he's a legit starting quarterback. Is there anybody like, it doesn't even have to be just this draft, but like your dynasty startup this year, there's like any certain players you like, I want to make sure I leave the draft with this guy?
I have so many guys across that I almost can't do that because, and if you get that guy, I've got another one, while his ADP might be, half a round later, it's still a guy that I'm excited to get onto my dynasty team. So I don't really have guys that I'm determined to leave, each draft with, but I don't mind reaching for guys either. At the end of the day, I want to be happy with the team that I have. And so while I'm drafting for value, I'm also drafting for the guys that I like. I mean, we all do it, and that fluctuates on a yearly basis. But Deontay Johnson is a guy that I've been really high on, and I tend to leave most of my drafts with him because I'm willing to pull the trigger on him before most people are. As soon as I see any of those Steeler wide receivers starting to cut, they're all ADP wise, they're all right there together, stacked on top of each other. And you ask the community, and they're kind of split on them. Claypool truthers, and I do like Claypool. I was a huge Juju guy, and I've kind of faded on him a little bit. Deontay, I still believe, is the one in that offense, and then I don't know what it's going to look like here this year. But I do like Claypool's outlook long term. I think Juju's he got a 1-year deal here to stay with Pitt, and who knows what will happen with Ben Roethlisberger after the fact. But I love Deontay Johnson. I was high on him coming into the NFL draft. When the Steelers got him, Steelers have been known for drafting gem wide receivers and bringing them up properly, throughout the franchise. And Deontay Johnson has done just that. I mean, he was a target machine last year. And of course, yeah, he dropped a lot of balls, but I didn't stop Ben Roethlisberger from hitting him for 10 plus targets almost on a weekly basis.
It'll be real interesting to see what his quarterback situation looks like after this year, though, too, especially with all them Pittsburgh wide receivers.
Let's just hope it's not Haskins.
God, I hope not. We could have a whole little story about him one day. Just about how, at Ohio State, all he did was throw screen passes. Hey, look, you got Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin running for days.
So after all those quarterbacks went off the board to start the second, Kittle was kind of a surprise to me going at the 2-3, the first tight end off the board. I don't mind that. I am a Kittle supporter. It just seems like the community has really kind of softened on him a little bit, labeled him injury prone, and with the uncertainty at the quarterback position in San Fran, while it's on the up and up, they have options. We still don't know for sure if Jimmy G is going to be starting week 1. I believe that'll be the case, and that might be better for the likes of Kittle, at least short term wise. I do like Lance and I like what he brings to the table, but fact of the matter is I think rushing is going to be king there in San Fran. And, while we do like Kittle, we like Ayuk, and we do like Deebo Samuel, they thrive on defense and run scheme. And I don't know that Kittle is going to be able to really thrive, stay healthy, like we'd want him to be our dynasty tight end 1 here. So I was a little surprised to see him go as early as he did at the 2-3. Now, I do believe this is a premium or a slight premium due to the start 2 tight end roster construction. So Kelsey ended up going at the 2-7, so 4 picks after Kittle. No surprise there. He's still elite, dynasty tight end 1, tied to the best quarterback in the NFL. So as long as he's still putting up elite numbers, I don't think that anybody's going to waver as far as him being the tight end 1. And then it kind of comes back down to us here, all the way back to the 2-9, and we see Saquon Barkley go off the board. That's pretty good value for Saquon right there. And I followed it up with Dalvin Cook. I think that he's my favorite to be the RB1 this year. And I don't know, at this point, I really hadn't decided what I was doing long-term strategy-wise. Dalvin Cook is kind of more of a win-now piece, but he's also probably one of the highest valued running backs as far as top 3, top 4, what you'll get for dynasty value running back right now. And I wasn't going to let him get away from me. So he was my next RB off the board. I think Taylor went a little bit earlier than I would have gone. I kind of I'd be more comfortable with Taylor here, right around where we were picking here, late second, early third. But that did allow Barkley and Cook to slide down to the end of the second round there. And so I capitalized on that, took Dalvin Cook, and, got myself a top tier running back and a top tier quarterback to start the draft. And you were hot on my heels with the wide receiver 1 drafted here in this draft, the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, as far as I'm concerned. And it leads back to what we just said with Travis Kelce. He's tied to the greatest quarterback in the NFL right now, and a great system that can literally win you weeks any given week. So it was good value for you. Tell me a little bit more about this pick right here at the 2-11.
Like AJ Brown's my wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, but we got that extra bonus on there too, which just makes Tyreek Hill stupid, like in this, because you get like 40-yard bonus and stuff like that. Like in this format, he's just too good, and like he's still young enough. Typically, I don't own a lot of Tyreek Hill just because of all his off the field issues that he's had in the past, So that's one of the things you have to consider too. But I'm like, here, I'll take the chance. And as we got around to it, I kind of went more all in towards this year, just with the value that was on the board. Obviously, you said you're giving away a sweatshirt too, so I kind of want that. But
Yeah, no, I want that, man. That's why I picked Dalvin Cook, man.
You're kind of in the middle of this draft almost. You didn't go like super young, you didn't go super old or anything like that either. Is that kind of typically how you do? Is you want to get some of these
Yeah,
younger guys that haven't broken out yet, instead, because like some people, they go in and it's like, oh, I gotta get all the really young guys, I get all the rookies and stuff like that. But then,
yeah, I like to have a good mix. I do like, I'm in the ages just like most of the dynasty players in the community right now, and I'm guilty. And it just comes down to, do you want to buy the bread with a 3-week life shelf, so that way you can have sandwiches for 3 weeks, or do you want the stuff that you got about 2 or 3 days to eat it, or else it's going to be super moldy? So like, it's a no-brainer for me. I'll forget about bread for 2 or 3 days, and then next thing you know, I open the pantry and it's moldy. Those aren't the guys that I want on my dynasty roster. I want the 2 or 3 week shelf life bread, top shelf bread on my dynasty roster. So typically, no, I'm hard pressed to draft almost any position aside from quarterback and tight end above the age of 28. I see 28, and I kind of turn my nose up a little bit. And it's, like I said, I don't mind trading for pieces like that when I have a team that it fits. When everything's clicking and I have my shot, I'll sell the farm, to take it home that year. But typically in a startup draft, that's not where I'm at. That's not my mindset. My favorite part of the game is the off season, finding those guys that are young, that are unproven, and saying, I was on him, and guess where I got him? I got him in the 14th round 2 years ago, and now he's a top 4 startup round, so like that's where I'm at. Those are the guys I'm looking for. So no shame on veterans. Julio Jones still has a chance to be a wide receiver 1 all year this year, but ultimately he's pretty far down my rankings list when it comes to startup dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up with Julio and Tom Brady too. They both only probably got a couple years left, but once I kind of committed to like, hey, I'm going to try to win this year too, it made a lot of sense. And like Tom Brady, you look at him and you see like, oh, he's 43, almost 44 or whatever, but if the dude's in this good shape, if he's going to keep playing like he is, if you get 2 years out of him, like, and you're getting him in like the 7th or 8th round, and people are drafting like Aaron Rodgers in the 2nd or 3rd round, and we don't even know if he's going to play this year. So it's just like, sometimes you got to play a little bit of value game too, especially when you have to start that many quarterback, or you don't have to, but it's beneficial.
So, ended up coming down to the end of the 2nd there, and brother Matt went Kamara at 212, and then he went ahead and he knew he had no chance of getting Kyle Pitts anywhere else other than the 3-1. He wasn't going to make it past the 3-3. I will tell you that. So, brother Matt, kudos to you on the Kyle Pitts snipe. That's one less league that I'll have him in, but I am sending a trade to your inbox after this episode. Coach, you were back on the clock at 3-2. Tell me about your process here where you selected this big son of a gun.
Well, I think at this point, like, probably the best value that was on the board, especially like in terms of immediate impact, was Derrick Henry. So I think this is kind of the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to kind of go all in. And, even with those extra point bonus and everything too, Derrick Henry's boosted up in this format quite a bit as well. So like typically I don't play in leagues that, you get those extra points for the long runs or the extra yards and stuff like that, just because like I found it kind of gimmicky in the past, and sometimes it's harder to try to figure out guys that can do that. But in a league like this, where you're playing with so much of it, sometimes you can take advantage of different guys like that too. I know you talked about Kyle Pitts, and I know you love him, and he's kind of one of them rookies that you've been trying to get about everywhere. Is there any other rookie like that you're looking at this year that you're really trying to get?
I mean, as far as redraft goes, or in dynasty startup,
for dynasty and in like your rookie drafts as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that I've been trying to get. I can talk about some of my most owned, my most sought after acquired shares as far as the last 2 months have gone, and Kyle Pitts is one of them for sure. I was high on him coming into the process, and a Florida Gator fan myself. I've been drooling over Pitts for what feels like years at this point. So, you know, to see him come to the NFL as a top 5 pick and no less go to my Atlanta Falcons, you know, I was really unbelievably jacked up about it. And so I let my bias fully kick in on all fronts, and I try to soak up as many shares as I can with him. But outside of him, it's Justin Fields is another guy that I was bullish on in most of my Superflex rookie drafts. 102, Justin Fields. 103, Justin Fields. 104, Justin Fields. It didn't matter if I needed a quarterback or not. I just recently, I think I got Justin Fields through trade via recently. I had the 103 and ended up taking Lance, and the guy in front of me took Fields at 2. He did it just because he knew he could tax me after the fact, but he actually ended up selling Fields off in a different trade, and then the guy who traded for him traded for Lance, said he wanted Lance over him anyway, but made me forfeit a couple of pieces, you know, and I was like, whatever, you know, take these pieces right here and give me my guy. So, like I said, I don't mind paying up and getting my guys. Elijah Moore is another big one that I was big on to all rookie season here, and I've been soaking up shares and good reports, bad reports. You know, it seems like he's been glowing during OTAs, and then Crowder was expected to kind of leave, now takes the pay cut, and he will be in there allegedly for the time being. And but I think I saw a report today that said even if Crowder's in the slot, coaching staff's comfortable with Elijah out wide in the Z position. You know, I still am bullish and high on Elijah Moore, and he's a guy that I have soaked up a ton of shares of. And that just kind of covers the, you know, the top 14, 15 kind of round guys. I've got a bunch of shares of deeper guys, but those are the guys that I was really kind of targeting in most of my rookie drafts. Soaked up a bunch of Waddle and Smith too. Anytime I was there at the back of the first, typically those wide receivers were there. So, you know, if I was picking at 111, yeah, I'd try to get a Waddle or Smith share right there, and then come back and right it there at the 2-2 and grab Elijah on the way back.
Yeah. And I think Elijah, there's just a lot of interesting things with him this year too. You see if they get him involved kind of like that Deebo Samuel type of role in San Francisco, where they get him on some jet sweeps and stuff like that. Like, they talk about playing him on the outside. I don't think that's going to be good for him, because he struggled a lot with press coverage when he was actually pressed in the SEC. But it wasn't very often because he played the slot the whole time. But when you watch the tape and he actually got pressed, he was bad against it. So it'll be real interesting to see what they do there. Do you think Justin Fields is just better? Like, do you fully believe in him? Like, he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, or he's just going to be more one of those guys that's probably better for fantasy than real life?
No, I mean, I do believe in him for both aspects. I think he's going to be a great fantasy football quarterback almost immediately upon getting his full-time shot. And I think it's going to be a gold train for at least a few years. And I do think it's going to be great for the Bears. I mean, hats off to the Bears, man. You know, they made an aggressive move there and saw the value that was sliding down the board, and have the best quarterback that they've had on that franchise in a long time, as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, Matt Nagy recently coming out and saying, you know, he refuses, I guess, to name Justin Fields as the week 1 starter, which is fine. You know, he doesn't need to be, but, you know, Matt Nagy is probably not long for the Chicago Bears, even at this point. And, you know, his best bet is Justin Fields saving his job. And even if Justin Fields comes out here and lights the NFL on fire, I don't know that Nagy's safe. You know, I feel like his time in Chicago is running out, and Justin Fields is the franchise there moving forward. They're going to bring in a coach that, you know, that can, you know, take his skill set and work with that, build around a player like that, rather than Nagy, you know, being the guy that wants somebody perfect that's going to fit his system. That's not today's NFL. You know, you get these playmakers like Justin Fields, and you need to tailor the offense around his skill set, what he can do, and that's wreak havoc in today's NFL. He's got everything that you need as far as great deep ball, and, you know, just like I mentioned with Jalen Hurts. He's got deep ball capabilities and true rushing upside, 4.4 speed. That's fantasy football gold right there. And I think with the defense that they have in Chicago, he's not going to have to light the offense on fire, but is he going to be able to average more than 2 yards per play, which is what Andy Dalton gives you under center? I think so.
Well, I know there's been a lot of talk about that too. And what I was listening to earlier, they said Andy Dalton start week 1 no matter what, even if Justin Fields lights the world on fire like in the preseason, is what Nagy said in an interview today. He kind of alluded to it when he was talking to Chris Collinsworth a couple days ago as well. But there's like this theory too. Hey, if we don't start Justin Fields right away, then maybe I'll get another year, is what Matt Nagy's trying to say. Because we picked this guy, but I didn't get a chance to really work with him. But
right, got to coach him up.
I have a lot of theories about Matt Nagy and Mitchell Trubisky and stuff, and why he took over the play calling so that he could just scapegoat Trubisky last year and keep his job. But that's a whole nother story. Without diving in too much, though, I want to like Justin Fields, but there's a lot of concerns there for me too. So
yeah, I know you're a big Zach Wilson guy. So do you think, let me hear your take, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, fantasy football success versus real NFL success? Where are you at?
See, that's like where it gets hard for me, because it's like, if you're in a dynasty, if you're in fantasy football, I think they're almost equal just because of the extra rushing upside that Justin Fields has. Like, I have more confidence in Zach Wilson being a good NFL quarterback and keeping his job for a longer period of time. So, like, for me, that's where he weighs in, and I probably take him earlier. But you got the whole Jets factor, and that might screw him up too. But, everybody's buying into that. And if you look at all the stuff from reports right now, is Zach Wilson's been nothing short of spectacular. But you go on like Twitter, and people don't even want to acknowledge it because they're on this whole bandwagon that Zach Wilson can't be good. Even though, like, you just watch it. They're like, oh, he only had one good year. Well, he was great as a freshman. His sophomore year, he was coming off shoulder surgery, so he could barely throw. Like, it's just, when people get stuck in it, that's the worst part about like some of the fantasy football communities. When somebody gets stuck in their take, they won't budge. They won't admit they're wrong when they're actually wrong. But we'll boost up Elijah Moore because we like Elijah Moore and he's awesome in practice. But who's throwing him the ball? Who's making all these great reads? Who's done everything? Who's done everything right? It's just like, and then like the Elijah Moore hype. Somebody brought it up too that the Jets corners aren't in it very good either. So maybe he's not as good as we think he is either. Your team kind of got interesting with the tight end position too.
I slick avoided the tight end as far as I could in this format. After Dalvin Cook there in the third, I took my wide receiver one in A.J. Brown. And this was pre-Julio trade, obviously, I believe. So a little bit of damper on his at least 2021 upside for the time being. But I still take him over Metcalf, over Jefferson. Diggs could be in discussion right there. But you know me, I'm A.J. Brown at heart, and I wasn't going to let somebody else get him here in the third round.
Like, looking at this board now, we see Calvin Ridley, obviously like the end of or I guess it's the beginning of the fourth round. Do you think he gets bumped up more with Julio gone then?
Yeah, I think he's right there with A.J. Brown, Metcalf, and Jefferson and Diggs right now. I mean, obviously he came right there after them, but he's got to be right in the discussion with those guys, with Julio being out the door. 150 targets is pretty much scribbled in stone for Calvin Ridley this year. I could gush over Calvin Ridley here all episode too. He's another one of my go-tos. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to get a lot of him lately, but the past 2 years I soaked up enough shares. He is my most owned wide receiver across all my dynasty leagues.
I guess with him too, how much longer do you think like Matt Ryan's in Atlanta?
I mean, it really just depends. Obviously, how this year goes is going to kind of be a factor as well. But he's still locked in for a good chunk of change for the next 2 years. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's pretty much where it stops, is right there. But like I said, if the franchise struggles again mega this year, ends up picking towards the top of the draft, you could see what a lot of people speculated might happen in this draft come to fruition in the next NFL draft.
Yeah. And next, well, for 2022, there's an interesting group of quarterback prospects. You're just really waiting to see which ones take the next like step forward.
Right.
Because, I mean, if you look at Spencer Rattler, he's very talented, but he had a lot of inconsistencies. We've seen Sam Howell look great at times. We've seen him make some pretty bad throws at times too. Kind of carbon copy of Baker Mayfield in college. And then we got Keaton Slovis out of USC, great freshman year. Last year, not as good, but he was dealing with an elbow injury too. We got guys like Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati, who's kind of inconsistent with his accuracy, his ball placement at times. We got guys like Mark Willis, who had one great year at Liberty. What's he going to do this year? JT Daniels at Georgia even. You know, he only played a couple games at the end of last year, but looked really good. So as he's take that step up this year too, there's just a lot of guys in this quarterback class for 2022. And we'll see which ones even end up declaring as well. So
what Swift went off the board here as what, the RB 5 or 6? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, RB 7, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where things get a little interesting with, you know, the Swift, Gibson. I think Chubb actually kind of belongs before both Swift and Gibson. That's at least where I would have gone. Mm-hmm. And Swift, Gibson, Akers, and Harris, they're all kind of in a tier for me. And lately I've been leaning towards, you know, Akers and Harris even over Swift and Gibson. While it feels a little early for Harris, I really think that he is going to be a top 5 dynasty running back this time next year. And I got him. I think I've got him right around RB 10 right now as far as dynasty running backs go, and there's room to climb. And I think this year we could see him be one of a select few 300 plus touch running backs that we do get to see. And Mike Tomlin's got a reputation of making that be the case year in and year out. I really like Najee. I like his value right now in dynasty, and I just wish I had more shares, quite frankly. You know, playing in a lot of super flex leagues, if I had one of those top tier, you know, top 3, 4 picks, I'm like I said, I'm not typically a running back guy myself. I was getting these quarterbacks or potentially a Kyle Pitts with all the tight end premium that also is floating around. So Najee was just a guy, him and Jamar Chase both, who, you know, Chase we can talk about here in a minute, as I was able to get myself. That was my first and only Jamar Chase share I have. And it was because it was rookies included in a dynasty startup that I was even able to make it happen. You know, because once again, if I was picking in those top 3, 4 picks in these super flex rookie drafts, Jamar Chase and Najee just weren't typically at the top of my list there. They were right there in the 105, 106, 107 range for me. And so I didn't get many shares of those two. So I was really stoked to get a Jamar Chase share here. You know, you could argue it was a little early, but I don't think that that's going to be the case again. You know, like I said, in Dynasty, I don't mind kind of making a bet per se that, you know, especially with these top tier rookie talents like Najee, Jamar Chase, those guys are going to get every benefit that you can imagine as far as to why their value will not only not go down, but more than likely go up, even if they underperform year one. So those both feel like super safe bets to land on your dynasty roster during a startup like this one. I just think their floor is really safe for dynasty value. Those two prospects alone, Pitts, you can throw into that conversation as well. There's no outcome that I could see in 2021 where any of those guys really take a hit in dynasty value. I really just only see them going up into next year.
And you make a good point there too. Like we don't see a lot of rookies go down in general. Like after their rookie year, obviously we've seen some guys after last year. You got like your Henry Ruggs of the worlds. Tua went down some. Jerry Judy went down a little bit too. I know a lot of people are still really high on him. You ended up taking him too. So I guess you're still on the Jerry Judy train then.
Yeah, I was higher on him. I think we've had this discussion before too. I was higher on him coming out that year, and I'm a sucker for route runners, and that is what Jerry Judy's game was, and it still is. And hopefully the quarterback situation there in Denver kind of maybe Teddy Bridgewater can light the fire under Drew Lock and help him out a little bit. But if not, I think Teddy Bridgewater is kind of the better fit for a Jerry Judy, as to where Cortland Sutton really, I think, benefits from Drew Lock, who's more prone to throw up those 50-50 balls that Cortland Sutton seems to be top 5 in the league when securing and coming down with it. It'll be interesting. I think Drew Lock does have the edge right now. It seems like the team is kind of behind him. Von Miller recently coming out and saying as much about Drew Lock and him being the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. So Drew Lock, if you've been getting him in dynasty startups, I don't know where he went in this one. We can look at some point, but he's been a great value as far as I'm concerned right now. Essentially going, as a QB 30 or somewhere along those lines. And he's got the potential to start 17 games here with a plethora of weapons around him. If he can just quit being a bonehead and making the plays that he shouldn't, he goes out there and it almost seems like every play he wants to win the football game. And that's not what Denver Broncos need him to do.
Well,
So I like Drew Lock. I love the player, and I hope that he can take a step forward this year and really allow the Noah Fants, the Jerry Judys, and the Cortland Suttons to flourish in that offense. It could be a fun offense if we can just see some substantial quarterback play.
Yeah. And I wasn't big on Drew Lock coming into the draft. He had a lot of pocket presence issues in college, happy feet and stuff like that. But he's shown progression. And I think the second year with Pat Shurmur is really going to do a lot for him as the offensive coordinator, being in the same offense. And like people just want to write him off so quick. And the dude's made 18 career starts. He's been hurt both years he's been in the NFL. He just really hasn't had much stability at this point in time. So I think he's going to get better. I don't think he's gonna, like you said already, I don't think he's very good for Jerry Judy, but I don't think Teddy Bridgewater's any kind of answer either. I don't think, like, if you have Teddy Bridgewater, you're probably winning 7 games with their team. So Drew Lock, I kind of talked about him before with a couple different other people, and it's just like he's kind of like that young Brett Favre, where he's that gunslinger. He's got the big arm, but he doesn't know how to turn it down, and he just thinks he can make every throw. And like, if you look back in 1992 or 1993, when Brett Favre was that young, he was doing the same type of stuff. Brett Favre wouldn't have lasted in today's NFL because he tried to make all those throws. Nowadays, people expect you to be like gold by year 3. Not saying he's Brett Favre, but there's similarities there in the type of play that they had, like when they were real young,
So obviously, I locked up Kyler Murray as my QB1 in the first round, and then coming into the 5th there is where were you under the impression, or it looks like, what did you trade out of the 5-2?
Yeah, because I traded back that pick.
Okay,
you wanted me to take Hopkins, then I traded back with Nate.
And Hopkins went anyway. Yeah, I think I remember I messaged you and said take Hopkins so I don't have to stare at him when I'm on the clock.
Then I traded out.
It makes sense for my team, but I still love Hopkins and I think he's great. But he's the guy that we are starting to see that downhill on his value kind of come into effect. And even if he shreds this season, I just don't see his value really going up a whole bunch. While he may be able to hold value, I don't see his value really going up anymore. And kudos to True North Nate. He did get a good value on him here. I don't know what wide receiver 8 or 9, maybe something like that. So decent value. But I didn't want him on my team. So I was happy when True North Nate traded up and did get Hopkins right in front of me. And then I'm staring at Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Ezekiel Elliott. Do I go back to the running back position again? The round earlier I did take Dobbins, and that was a pick I feel like I have a little bit of regrets on. I feel like going back, I would probably take Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Dobbins. I'm rising on Clyde again. He's kind of coming back up my ranks. Dobbins, I love his big playability. I love the rushing offense that he's in, but it's the same concerns that everybody talks about, and that's the running back target share there in Baltimore, and it's terrible. So. And we know the value of targets versus a carry is, 2.5 to 1 or what have you. And if the targets aren't there, what kind of upside are we looking at? I want a running back that's going to catch 50 balls a year, and I want that to be his floor. And while I do think Dobbins has the receiving chops, I don't believe Harbaugh when he says Baltimore is going to be a pass happy team, or but even if they could get to not bottom of the league in pass attempts, we could see some good movement as far as that goes. But looking back at this draft board now, I think I would have loved for Najee or Jones to be there when I made that Dobbins pick, but obviously they weren't. Hawkinson was another guy that I would have been potentially looking at. He's right there at that Dynasty tight end tier break for me, right after Hawkinson. I mean, Andrews was there, but once again, we're talking about the Baltimore passing game. I do think Andrews is a value right now as far as where he is going. I don't know if you're on the Mark Andrews train or not. I was originally. I've kind of cooled on him myself, and it's just we all knew the step back from Lamar Jackson was coming as far as his efficiency that we saw 2 years ago. We all knew it was coming, and it did, but it still stings. Even though we knew it was going to happen, it still kind of hurts, and you can't help but look at guys like Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews, and even rookie darling that I like, Rashad Bateman. And kind of just have that burned into the back of your mind is like, what kind of true receiving upside can we expect from a Baltimore team? Even if you have a 30% target share, what does that look like compared to, a Kyle Pitts with a 22% target share or what have you? So it's just really tough to buy into that Baltimore passing game. And tough to buy into the running game outside of Lamar Jackson. It's one of those teams where he's the guy that I want, and I don't really want anybody else.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Do you think Mark Andrews is going to be boom? He's just going to be boom bust like he's been like last year. He's like, if he got the weeks where he had the targets or the touchdowns, he was great. But the other weeks it was like he had 3 catches for like 22 yards.
Yeah, and he just feels very touchdown dependent. Even though we saw some big plays from him, he feels more like in the Tonyan discussion as far as really relying on efficiency, and efficiency as far as touchdowns go is not a recipe for that I'm trying to bank on a yearly basis. So he is he's right there with Hawkinson as far as I'm concerned, just based off of talent and overall offense. While I like Hawkinson and I think he's going to get a ton of volume this year, how good is Detroit's offense really going to be? How many red zone opportunities are they going to see? We know Lamar Jackson can get from one end of the field to the other in the blink of an eye. That's not what's in question here. It's the passing volume. So I think Andrews is still right there with Hawkinson as far as dynasty goes and moving forward, but a nice little tier break there for me after that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the way it is even in redraft too. Is you get the top 4, I would call it in redraft, where you got top 3 with Waller, Kittle, Kelsey, Then you get the Hawkinson, you get the Pitts, the Andrews, and then there's kind of a break after that. And I feel like if you're not getting like one of the top guys, that's kind of where you're like, you just wait till that break starts and then you kind of go from there. So Goddard and Komet both went before I got Fant. So I'm happy getting like Fant in that position. I think this could be a good year for him. And him and Drew Lock really have chemistry too.
Yeah, I do like Fant. He's right there at the tail end, right there in line with where it looks. Linda, shout out to her. You know, she's had the Komet love for a while. I love Komet more now, knowing Justin Fields is there in Chicago. So I know she's soaking up the shares of Komet, and I wish I had more now. So she pulled the trigger there on Komet at the 6.7 and left you Fant at the 6.11, and then that is like another tier break as far as I'm concerned. With the tight ends is right outside of those three, Goddard, Komet, and Fant. Then you're looking at the Irv Smith, the Trotman, Tonyan, Gesicki. So obviously I didn't land any of those guys, and those top two tiers are the tight ends that I would prefer, especially in a league like this. But I'm not going to let the board dictate my picks. Once again, I'm trying to ignore roster construction for the most part, and I'm just playing the value that comes down to me. I know when I was on the clock at 6'10", Javonte Williams was in the wheelhouse, and I knew Brother Matt is a huge advocate for him. So before I made the pick, I said, you know, I tagged him and everything. I said, Brother Matt, send me an offer, or you know, cry to me after the fact. So he already knew what time it was at that point. And I don't remember what the trade was, but we did end up getting the trade done. And I think I traded there to his pick at the 7-1. I took Josh Jacobs, and then I think it was later on the next round where Dan Made Graphics asked me if Jacobs was available. And of course, always be selling running backs. Josh Jacobs was available. So I sold him for, let's see, it looks like the 8-4 and some other picks. And at the 8-4, I ended up getting Jerry Jeudy. You know, and I took Jacobs there kind of for running back scarcity's sake. And instantly I had an offer where I was able to capitalize. And I'm not a huge Josh Jacobs guy, but I'm playing the board. I'm playing the value that was there. And with the running back scarcity, Josh Jacobs was kind of there at a tier break. As you can see right after him, you're looking at Carter, Robinson, Davis, Edmonds. So Jacobs was really the last guy there of those running backs there that I went ahead and gobbled him up. Got a deal done with Dan Made Graphics, was able to still get a wide receiver that I am fond of, that we mentioned earlier, in Jerry Jeudy, and whatever the other pick ended up being. But I tend to trade back in drafts whenever I can, especially if I'm going after a guy that I know is going to be a little bit of a reach as far as the board goes. I'm trading back and collecting a little bit of extra capital, you know, even if it's 3 rounds from there, I'm moving up a half a round, switching out a round, the standard move up or move back deal. But I'm always looking to capitalize. And every time I trade it kind of changes the draft board for me a little bit too. Now I've got picks at the back of the 8th round when I've been picking at the top of the even rounds, and it just kind of allows you to do some things, and it doesn't always work out, but I think just knowing those tier breaks and really trying to get in at the end of those tier breaks and not, keep moving out, selling out, and to get yourself into the next tier of guys. So knowing those tiers that you have set going into a draft can be super helpful as far as saying, like, look, I got another 10 or 15 guys left in this tier until, it's kind of a big drop for me. Maybe I can sell my 2 picks after that drop and get an additional pick inside these next 15 picks. So I'm always looking to make moves during startups, trade happy as I can.
Yeah, I'm always trying to trade back too when I can, just collect extra picks for the future. And I don't remember who I was listening to that said this, but like, just when you, like, with the tiers that you're talking about, so maybe you have 5 players in one group and like you're at the beginning of the tier and like you could pick from one of the 5 players, but instead of doing that, you trade back 3 picks, let a couple people in front of you make the decision for you, and then you got one of the people that was in the tier plus an extra pick later.
And I've used that strategy where I am stuck. I can't decide which of these guys I want. So I want to trade back 2 spots and kind of let these guys dictate. And because I'm right there with value on all 3 or 4 of these guys if I'm unable to decide. So if I can trade back a couple spots, narrow down my search results, and pick up a little bit of capital, it almost feels like a no-brainer.
I'll get down to these tight ends that you did take, though. So you ended up taking Big Bob Tunyon and Mike Gesicki. So these are kind of 2 interesting ones because obviously Tunyon kind of had what I would call an outlier season last year in terms of, touchdown progression. I compared it to Jared Cook. He was one of my dynasty sells in that collaborative article that we did, right? And I think he's a guy that's really Aaron Rodgers dependent too. And then Gesicki he's weird. And then they took Hunter Long this year too. So Gesicki's probably not getting that contract extension, probably going to end up somewhere else. So it's a little bit of where's he going to end up? He's not really much of a blocking tight end.
Definitely. I ended up with essentially 3 tight ends in this start 2 tight end format that we ended up with. And it was Tonyan there. I love the player. I'm in total agreement with you that it was definitely an outlier season. Aaron Rodgers was unreal this past year, and outside of Devontae Adams, somebody else had to kind of be the beneficiary, and it was Tonyan. And yes, if Aaron Rodgers is indeed not playing for Green Bay this year, that does take a hit to him. But I still like the player, and while he had a super efficient season, there's a chance that he does get an uptick in volume this year. And while the touchdowns may not be there, maybe an extra 25 targets and 300 yards could go a long way for him. I still like the player, and if Aaron Rodgers does end up coming back to Green Bay, he was potentially a value here in the 9th round in this format. Mm-hmm. So I locked him up, and he has had wide receiver eligibility on Sleeper a lot too. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if they.
I think they're taking that away this year, though.
Yeah, they have said that that's what they're going to do, but he still has it as of right now, and that's kind of been another little selling point for him because I can actually start him in the wide receiver column if I find myself in a pinch, and yet still reap the benefits of the tight end premium scoring.
Do you worry about Gesicki now that they got Jalen Waddle to play the slot, and Gesicki, that's pretty much where he's been the best last couple of years when he was playing in the slot, not really a regular tight end. Now they got some blocking tight ends and just.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting Gesicki to come out and have a monster year this year. I do think that he probably will be elsewhere, like you mentioned, this time next year. But he's a freak athlete as far as Spark scores go, if you're into that. And I think he'll get an opportunity somewhere else, even if it's not in Miami, and it could be a better schemed team, as far as the Dolphins. They kind of thrived off their defense last year and didn't have to really get into a bunch of shootouts. But there's definitely a plethora of weapons compared to what they had last year down there in Miami. So I'm not expecting him to, like I said, come out and really be a top 10 tight end would be fine with me, somewhere back end tight end 1, top end tight end 2 is really all I was looking for. Like I said, if I didn't get in on those first few guys, I was really just trying to wait until I got to a round where guys like Tonyan, Gesicki were kind of in my wheelhouse as far as value goes. I had already locked up a few wide receivers, running backs, and my one quarterback. I essentially got Kyler Murray in the first round and then watched all these quarterbacks go off the board. And I was staring at guys like, do you want Mac Jones or Austin Eckler or Devontae Adams? I just every time it came back around to me, I was looking at my other options, running back and wide receiver versus a Derek Carr. Do I want Chris Godwin, Derek Carr, or Javonte Williams? I could not pick Derek Carr, so I continued to punt quarterback. I ended up with one quarterback that I actually feel good about. I got him at the 103. I'm not sure where I landed Cam Newton. I believe
Looks
that's my
like
first.
11th round.
I believe that was my first and only share that I have of Cam Newton anywhere across all my dynasty leagues. And it was just a kind of I don't know what I was doing with that pick. It was between him and Taysom Hill. And I didn't really want either of them, but I felt like with this format, with where the value was at and the guys that were around them, it just felt like maybe I'll get a QB2 that can kind of get me through this year. And we'll see what happens. I think Cam Newton is going to be the week 1 starter, and I think it's his job to lose this year. Now, if it looks as bad as it did this past year, he might lose it quicker rather than later. But I do think that he is going to be the QB there this year in New England, and hopefully I can get some valuable weeks out of him, potentially even look to move him at some point this year to a team that is either making the push or finds himself quarterback hungry after Cam Newton has a 3-touchdown performance on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, and he had some good games last year too, and then he got COVID, and he's just never the same.
Right.
And then I guess you got Jalen Waddle. It's kind of pairing with Gesicki that makes a nice little pairing too, since one of them is going to play that slot role, obviously. Jalen Waddle, he's not a guy that I was like super high on, but adding him with Tua makes a lot of sense there. Hopefully Tua takes that next step up. I'm just looking at some of these other guys that you ended up with. Tyler Higbee, there could be that bump there. I don't know. Are you in on this Jacob Harris hype?
I mean, I'm not. I think I might have 1 or 2 shares that I picked up post draft, even in some leagues somewhere. But I'm not really big on either, really. But I do think that Higbee does have opportunity. I actually kind of like the Rams' offense heading into this year with Stafford under center. I'm kind of excited to see what that Rams offense looks like. And with Gerald Everett out the door, that did bring some more opportunity for Higbee. Those two have constantly been battling each other there for the tight end 1 position. Well, I think it is clearly Higbee's at this point, and with Stafford, who has no problem feeding his tight end.
I think Higbee definitely has a chance to do something. A lot of people don't realize how much he actually blocked last year, just because they needed him to block too. Especially when Whitworth was out for a while when he was hurt. But I think he's definitely got a chance. I think all this Jacob Harris hype has just gotten like out of control. Like, dude had a good pro day, but he's like the 4th wide receiver at UCF. And now you're like, oh, well, he's going to convert to tight end, so he'll just be like really good. I'm like, we haven't seen him play good football, so I just don't buy into it. I think they got Bryson Hopkins too, he was a good tight end, like first team all Big Ten in college. So we actually know he can play tight end. That's my whole little thing with that. Let's see. You got Jalen Reagor is kind of interesting there. I've never been too high on Jalen Reagor. I don't know what your opinion is on him.
I like Jalen Reagor coming out last year. While he didn't do anything really with the opportunities that he got this past year. I do like the Eagles to, kind of revamp this year and take a step forward. Like we were mentioning in the True North chat, I believe earlier today, even you and Connor had a good little discussion going on about it. I think as far as targets go, there's a lot of opportunity to be had there in Philly. It's Goddard, it's Smith, and it's Reagor right now. And the chops of the receiving backs, but I'm hoping that the coaching staff can get a little bit more creative and figure out ways to get the ball into Rager's hands. And hopefully with Devontae blowing the top off of the defense, he'll find a little bit more room to work. You got to think about who had as far as their receiving options go. We learned more no-name Philly wide receivers last year in DFS than any year I can ever remember before. But it seems like often they were coming in and just and balling. There was a couple of Greg Ward games that Fulgham came through a few times.
Fulgham
But
month was weird.
it was he got hyped up big time for a couple of weeks. People were treating him like a back end wide receiver too in Dynasty, and he has essentially disappeared. You don't see the name even floating around at this point. So kudos to anybody that made a profit selling that guy last year.
Yeah, and Fulgham was a weird guy. I watched his tape out of Old Dominion. Like, he ran by people at Old Dominion, but he played against no names. Like, it was all like crappy teams. So, and then he got drafted in the 6th round by Lions. He got cut by Lions. He got cut by the Packers. I'm like, okay, so he had 3 good weeks with the Eagles. I'm like, this isn't gonna last. So, like, if you had him, and like, I know people that had him and sold him for a 2nd round pick. I'm like, you made out like a bandit. I think Jalen Reagor, I think he's just gonna be the deep threat. He's just gonna be that guy, tried like Deshaun Jackson role, try to take the top off the defense, and then everybody else is kind of. So I feel like he's just going to be the odd man out, and then they're going to kind of run Greg Ward in the slot or Kenny Gainwell when he's in there, maybe in the slot too. I know so many people are high on Kenny Gainwell. Like, I've seen all these tweets, like, oh, he's better than Miles Sanders, so he's going to take Miles Sanders' job. I'm like, he's not going to take Miles Sanders' job. He's not better than him. He's just overrated because Antonio Gibson had a good year last year, and everybody's like, well, he was so good, he kept Antonio Gibson out at wide receiver. Like, no. The dude's still 22 and only had 1 year of college football. So, me going on about that. I think Mostert in the 14th round was decent value there if he can stay healthy. Kenyon Drake in the 15th. Kenyon Drake's somebody that I'm probably going to have a lot of, especially in redraft this year.
I've ended up with a few shares of Kenyon Drake lately and some best ball drafts. I think he's a great best ball target as far as his value ADP goes. And, you think about if Kenyon Drake goes down, Josh Jacobs' role doesn't really change a whole bunch. But if Josh Jacobs goes down, Kenyon Drake's role changes a pretty good bit. And that's the kind of upside that I'm looking for these kind of late round running back targets, and Kenyon Drake is in my wheelhouse. He's been frustrating in the past couple of years to own in fantasy, but Gruden seems content to get this guy the football, whether it's from the wide receiver position or out of the backfield. So I think Kenyon Drake does possess a little bit of upside here for Vegas.
Yeah, and there's all the coach talk about him playing some wide receiver. So Devontae Booker last year, a couple of times they put him out at wide receiver and they threw him the ball like on a quick little screen. I think that's all that's going to be. Pretty much the same thing. I don't think he's going to actually run a whole big route clear or anything like that. But I do like Kenyon Drake a lot. I think him and Darrell Henderson are probably going to be 2 guys that I'm going to own a lot, especially in redraft, because you can get them like 9th, 10th round back to back. And I don't trust Cam Akers at all. I did not see I wasn't high on him coming out of college. I did not see anything special about him when he actually played. You watch the playoff game versus Seattle, and everybody's like, "Oh, he did so great. He averaged like over 5 yards a carry." I'm like, "Did you watch the holes the offensive line made for him? Like, he got all the yards that he was supposed to get. He didn't get any extra yards based on anything he did." So the Rams offensive line was a lot better last year than they were the year before. So I think there's a little bit of regression due there too. Injury concerns are kind of big for him too. I really like Darrell Henderson in general too. Plus, he's just fun to watch. He's like a big bowling ball when he gets rolling. Those 2 I really like. Christian Kirk's an interesting pick. I kind of like him for Dynasty because I think once he gets out of Arizona, maybe he has a chance.
He's another guy that I've seen to lately been getting a lot of shares of. He's lost a lot of steam in the Dynasty community. People are pretty much ready to anoint Rondale Moore the number 2 there in Arizona. And while that may be the case, I still think there can be some great weeks from Christian Kirk. The last couple of drafts I've done have been best ball oriented. And so I especially do like him in that format. He's not a guy that I necessarily want to plug into my wide receiver spot on a weekly basis, but a guy on my bench that I know is tied to an upper echelon quarterback in a pass-friendly system like they have there in Arizona, is going to have some boom weeks. I could definitely see some 4 for 125 and 2 scorings for Christian Kirk 2 or 3 weeks this year.
Yeah, like I said though, I think he's just a guy that he's going to get more value when he goes somewhere else. Like if he can land on a decent situation somewhere else, I don't even know if there's a good example for somebody that's kind of done that. But maybe he's the Devontae Parker, the Corey Davis that breaks out that 5th year, just switches situations, ends up somewhere better. I think he's still got talent. I just think Arizona's not the right spot for him overall. You got some other wide receivers that you ended up taking here too. Diami Brown, Van Jefferson. I do like Van Jefferson though, but
Yeah,
I don't know what they're gonna
Another
do with
Florida
it.
Gator guy that I wasn't super high on, and coming into the process, I did like him through my Florida bias more than anything. But I did my part to hype him up this past year, and I do like his outlook moving forward. He's been making some waves here in OTAs. Stafford seems to have some chemistry with him already. So, I like him as kind of a late round flyer at the wide receiver position as well this year.
He's another one of your real good route runners, but it makes sense because his dad was a wide receiver coach and played in the NFL too. So, were
Yep.
you big on Diami Brown then, or not?
I wasn't actually big on him initially. He kind of rose up my rankings a little bit late in the process. I'm more of a volume guy, and that's what leads me to the route runners, wide receivers that I enjoy, because those are typically the guys that are seeing more volume. They're not the field stretching barn burners that, while their points when they can come in large sections. The down weeks are just too much of a buzzkill for me to really invest in those guys and want them on my roster. So with Fitz magic here, anything's possible. I do like Washington. I like Terry McLaurin. I'm a big fan of his as well. Curtis Samuel, I think he was great towards the end of last year, and if Washington can find a role that suits him, I'm just not really sure what that offense is going to look like totally in 2021. Everybody wants Gibson to be the next best thing, but J.D. McKissick is still in the house and commanding 7 to 8 targets, it seems like, on a weekly basis. And now you have Curtis Samuel in the mix, who's also known to be used sporadically throughout the backfield and also soak up targets. So I think a lot of guys are going to be fighting for those same types of targets. And Terry McLaurin, I think, is still going to get his, but it'll be interesting to see how they divvy up the target distribution there in Washington.
Yeah, and even talking about Diami Brown, when I watched him, I just seen Nelson Aguilar. Like they're the exact same size, they play the same way. And I'm like, this guy's a 3rd round pick. He got picked in the 3rd round. It was pretty simple there, but I don't know how much he's actually going to be on the field as a rookie either, because we got Curtis Samuel. They got Cam Sims isn't that great, but they know him. They trust him. They drafted Antonio Gandy-Golden last year too, who it's 1 round later than Diami Brown this year, but he's been in the offense for a year. Curtis Samuel is kind of the wild card for their offense because played really good for the Panthers, but now he goes to Washington with the same guys that didn't use him right, previously. So it's like, did they learn their mistake or not? Then it looks like you got J.D. McKissick, Jameson Crowder. Those are just kind of value guys that can kind of fill in. So like where you got them, they're pretty good values overall, especially Jameson Crowder, because at that point in time, we thought he was getting cut.
Yeah, and at that point, I was kind of willing to take a ticket on him. I do think that he's a solid slot wide receiver in the NFL, and even if he were to get cut from the Jets, I think he could find himself in a position to be useful. But I'm content for him to stay with the Jets this year too. But like you mentioned, at this rate in the draft, it was a solid depth option that can fill in for my wide receiver heavy team if need be, or a guy that I can once again look to profit off of and sell mid-season.
Yeah, and then looks like pretty much everybody else was just kind of veteran guys that could have a little bit of spiking opportunity. Marlon Mack's obviously coming off that Achilles, and Marlon Mack's like this weird player because some people are just like, oh, he's dead because he had the Achilles, and then other people are like, oh, he's gonna take away carries and stuff. I'm like, he's probably gonna start the year on the pup.
I like Marlon Mack, man. I think he is a good football player. While he doesn't do anything great, he's a well-rounded guy that has shown flash when given an opportunity. And coming back from an Achilles injury, obviously the odds are kind of stacked against him. But even if he can come out and show that he's got a little bit in the tank, he very well may find himself next year in a different uniform and with some opportunity. I think he's still only 25 years old or something like that.
Yeah, he was from that 2017 draft class where they had Christian
So
McCaffrey,
he's
Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara.
so he's only 25 years old. At this point in the draft, like I said, guys like him and Tevin Coleman was right after him, another veteran guy who has dealt with a lot of health issues, but has a chance to be the RB1 there for the Jets. I do like Michael Carter and am a big fan of his as well. But there's a chance that Tevin Coleman does flourish in this Jets run zone scheme.
Yeah, the only thing good about him is he knows the system, but I think if you watched him play last year, he was just god awful. So I don't he shouldn't even be on an NFL team at this point, but who knows, maybe he comes back from the dead. But Brashad Perriman's kind of interesting. They don't really have wide receivers in Detroit, but if you believe the news that's coming out now, he's looked terrible apparently. So
yeah, I don't care what team Brashad Perriman plays for. That is a DFS darling on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Josh Kelly you got after that. I like Josh Kelly. I liked him coming in to last year. I had quite a few shares.
People were high on him last year. Coming in there, and not much has changed as far as the situation that he's in. While he didn't come in and boom year one, he still got Austin Eckler ahead of him, and Justin Jefferson is there as well. And I think they got another late Roundtree or
Roundtree. They took in the 5th round, but
there's a possibility where if Eckler goes down, we could see Joshua Kelly be the lead ball carrier. While it's already going to be a committee even with Eckler in the mix, and if he goes down, it would be a surefire committee. Every single one of those guys is a dart throw as far as who comes out on top. And when you're talking about the 24th, 25th round of a startup, as you can see here, running backs is kind of where I like to get my couple of stud running backs early, and then I like to wait till the end and just take a bunch of running back dart throws, because those are the guys whose value can go from jack shit to borderline running back 2, just based on the situation or whatever. And those are quick sells all day. So, it's just stacking up a bunch of scratch off tickets and putting them on the end of my bench. And, I have no problem cutting any of those guys when the next best ticket comes along.
Yeah. And then you try not to fall in love with any of them where you end up keeping them too.
Yeah. Justice Hill, what's happening?
Yeah. Well, last year I had Jeff Wilson Jr. everywhere, but I was getting him in 22nd round to startup drafts. I'm like, every time this guy plays, he's awesome. And then this year he had 3 weeks that were over 20 points in PPR, so he was really good. But now he's hurt again, so he's probably dead. But
I know you're a Tim Patrick guy. You think he stays in Denver? He seems like he could be a potential trade candidate.
So he's on a 1-year deal right now. So this is his 4th year in the league. He was undrafted. I believe he went to Utah, I want to say. Was with Baltimore for a little bit, I believe, on their practice squad. Then he got cut. Then he was with Denver. He's a very interesting player, very underrated. He's got the ability to kind of get deep, win some jump balls. Very, very good for DFS, darling. If you get his touchdown games right, which I did do about 3 different times last year. He's not a sexy name, but he's a good player. So I could see him definitely going somewhere else. I thought maybe if Allen Robinson left, maybe the Bears would go after him. I thought maybe the Packers could go after him too if they were looking at another wide receiver. But
Atlanta,
just a guy, when he's played, he's been good. Before him, I took Wayne Gallman just because that San Francisco run game. I think Wayne Gallman I've been picking up pretty much every league just because it's free. And I don't think Trey Sermon's not good. I don't care what people say. Like the skills that he has does not translate very well to the NFL. He's had a ton of injury problems. The best thing he does is catch the football. So we'll see if he does that at the NFL level. We'll see if he can pass protect at the NFL level. But I already know Wayne Gallman can play at the NFL level. Raheem Mostert, kind of one trick pony, and he gets hurt all the time. So Gallman's like the one I trust the most out of that backfield. Now that Jeff Wilson Jr. is gone, because I love him. So I took like 90% of my love and put it over to Wayne Gallman. But these last guys, I just really took people that I trust. Not people that I trust, but like people I really like. Andy Dalton, you're getting him way late, like the 20th round. He's probably going to start for the Bears. Somebody gets desperate for a quarterback, you flip him for like a second or a third round pick pretty easily. Felipe Franks, I like Felipe Franks. But
oh yeah,
he could be so good. If he gets coached up by the right people, he could be an NFL starting quarterback. And what you see with him, you don't get many guys that are 6'6.5", like 220 pounds, run a 4.6, and has a crazy good arm. But everybody's like, oh, he lost his job to Kyle Trask. He lost his job to Kyle Trask because he broke his freaking leg. And then last year at Arkansas, you see him progress as a passer, going through his progressions, making good reads, throwing with anticipation. I know he had a couple good wide receivers there. Burks was there. Obviously, he was going to be a pretty good pick. And then Mike Woods as well, who transferred to Oklahoma, but he took advantage of it. He did really well in that system. I was really surprised he didn't get drafted. I don't know why he didn't get drafted, because he's better than guys like Ian Book and Sam Ellinger and people like that. If you can get Felipe Franks back to running, because he didn't really run much at Arkansas, but I think that was kind of him getting over his whole broken leg thing, like the whole mental process. These guys that I took at the end here, Marquez Callaway, Saints, we don't know who their number 2 wide receiver is going to be. Callaway, they seem to like at least. I do like Deontay Harris though too, Deontay Harris, the punt returner guy, because he played really well when he played in the slot towards the end of the year. There's Burley Moore here for the Tennessee Titans. Titans don't have anybody at tight end. Burley Moore looked really good at Kansas State. Before that, he played at University of Northern Iowa, was just the blocking tight end essentially. But he's kind of in that George Kittle mold where he didn't have a lot of college production, very good blocker, and good after the catch. So sometimes you hit on those wild cards. So I've been getting him real late in drafts. And then what was this? LaMichael Pirine was like the last round pick. I'm like, why not? Because I already got Michael Carter too. It's like, well, at least you got both the young running backs there. See if they hit. But it's always really interesting to see everybody's preferences towards the end of the draft too. I could go in deeper leagues even, because I know too many people.
Yeah, you do.
Crazy.
But, guys that will never get drafted to a fantasy football team.
Yeah. My buddy Dedrick Mills, apparently he decided it was a good idea to sign with the Lions, though. He should have signed with the Falcons.
So who do you think ended up with the best team?
Let me see. I'll try to look here real quick. It depends, because obviously with Dynasty too, you're looking short term, you're looking long term too.
Right.
I like my team for short term, even though I got some younger guys too. I think there's lots of guys that I took shots on that could provide some value. I had to get my Tylen Wallace share because he's about everywhere. I had to get him before Linda got him.
Yeah, there's not really a team that I think stands out above all the others. Each team has certain things that I do like about that team, but they all have things that I don't like. Yeah. Calvin and Hobby's team turned out pretty good. I like Linda's team too. She's got Tannehill, CMC, Aaron Jones, Maury Cooper, Cortland Sutton, Travis Kelce, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, Mac Jones, and Drew Lock. So she kind of she got Tannehill at the 3-6, and then kind of loaded up the rest of her roster. Mac Jones in the 5-6, and she took Drew Lock at the 9-6. Which sounds early,
like
but with this format was not early. So he fell right in line with kind of where we expected him to go. So I do like Linda's team.
I think, and she's kind of higher on Drew Lock too, I think.
Yeah, she is. She's a big Drew Lock supporter herself.
Yeah, she's kind of defended him, and like I defended him, and I never like coming out of the draft. I never thought I'd end up defending this guy. And same thing with Derek Carr. Like I never knew I would defend him so much. But let's see. I'm looking here. Matt Daddy's team. It looked pretty good. Tight end's a little bit weak for him, but it's a pretty solid team otherwise.
Yeah, I don't mind Jesse's team here. He's got some nice pieces, at least up top.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get into his super flex, and I saw Ronald Jones in there, I kind of left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth.
So you're not a Ronald Jones truther then?
No, I'm not a truther of any running back that's down there in Tampa right now. I'm kind of just avoiding the position there in Tampa. I wouldn't be surprised if Giovanni Bernard comes out and is the running back to own down there. If I had to pick one, though, it would be Ronald Jones. I'm not looking to. I don't think I have a single share, and there's a lot of guys that I would get in order to avoid getting a share.
Ronald Jones is like the weirdest running back, honestly, because like you watch him, and he'll like. His vision is so bad, like half the time, because he'll just like run into the back of his guard and fall over, and then like the next play, he'll like bump into his guard and then like break a tackle and then run for 6 yards. It's like weird. He's good, but he's not good. Like it's. And watching Jamar Jefferson at Oregon State, he runs almost the exact same way. It's all like big run, or it's I ran into the back of my own offensive lineman. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jamar Jefferson does remind me of some Ronald Jones.
And then Ronald Jones last year, I think too, he kind of bulked up. He just looked.
He did. He looks like he was like a little mini Derrick Henry almost.
Like he bulked up, but then he was just like he was slow. Typically, like in Dynasty, though, I'll take like one good running back early, and then like I'll just punt running back for like a long time after that.
Yeah,
I'll just go like modified 0 RB usually in Dynasty, unless there's like somebody that just falls on the board that makes sense.
Well, if you can lock up a running, a top tier running back early, I feel great about having that one solid piece, and then being able to take some shots a little bit later with some later round guys that I don't mind fluctuating into my RB2 role until I can trade for a piece that I'd feel more confident plugging in regularly. But, it just kind of goes back to me not really putting a whole lot of thought into filling out my starting roster during the draft. I'm all about the value, and I can fill that spot months away.
Yeah. For me, it's just, I don't value running back like super high in Dynasty, because half these guys, if you're lucky, you get 3 years out of them. So I'd rather just take somebody later on. They are going to increase in value, and then just kind of replace the guy over and over again. Or I'll just trade back and I'll get rookie picks, and then I'll just take a rookie running back later. Obviously, I like how this draft panned out. It's not like the TNF one that we did where I drafted all the guys, and we did that one before free agency in the draft, and it's like my whole team just died. It's like everybody's situation got worse, and then obviously Deshaun Watson had his whole legal thing after that too. So it was just like everything that could have gone wrong pretty much went wrong, because I had both the Patriots tight ends as kind of like my pair of tight ends, and then brought in Jonnu and Hunter Henry. I'm like, well, these guys are pretty much useless now.
Dead. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't even remember who all else, but it was just like every situation was just like that. I was like, well, none of these guys are useful. So I'm like, I'm going to rebuild now. But like, that's important to know too. Like when you play dynasties, like when to kind of build your team up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if you got any lasting advice for dynasty for people.
Just being active in dynasty, and it is like the trade market. The guys' values are constantly fluctuating, and if you can get in at the right time, Joe Mixon is a guy whose value's kind of been on the rise the last 2 months. He was going as like the RB16, RB17 a couple months ago. People were writing him off. He's kind of back up on in that top 10 discussion again, and rightfully so. I think he has a great opportunity this year. But just being able to spot value for guys with dynasty football, all it takes is one blurb coming out, and instantly guys start getting thoughts rolling in the back of their head about why this guy's a potential sell. So just being able to riff through the weeds and spot the values, the ups and downs, and that's the name of the game. Buying guys low and selling them high. There's absolutely nobody who I won't sell for the right price, and there's nobody who I won't buy if I feel like there's room to grow. Every single player is an investment in one form or another, whether it's an investment to win a championship or an investment to turn a profit. Guys like Justin Jefferson, huge value that you were able to get, late first, early second in last year's Superflex rookie drafts. And now he's you're getting top 5 value for him at the wide receiver position in Dynasty. Justin Herbert, another guy, and all these guys, while I love them, neither one of them are on my real sell radar. They're guys that I'm willing to sell right now because just value wise, it almost won't get any better with where they are. Even if both guys come out hot again this year, they're pretty much going to stay right about where they're at. But if it doesn't pan out like it did last year, you could see these guys take a good chunk out of their value. And so look at your team, know your team, and be willing to sell guys, even if they are top tier guys, because top tier guys don't stay top tier guys, and you can get top tier dollars.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake a lot of people make too often too. They like, oh, this player's untradeable, I can't trade him. It's just like, say, okay, Patrick Mahomes untradeable. Well, if you get 3 first-round picks, a quarterback, and another player that's going to help your team, is that more helpful to you than Patrick Mahomes is? Depends on your situation too, but like you can't just be stuck in like, oh, I can't trade Patrick Mahomes or I can't trade Justin Jefferson, but my team sucks.
Right.
Too at the same time. So like you just gotta be aware of your situation pretty much all the time. Even like I said in our TNFF league that I drafted like Ezekiel Elliott. I'm like, oh, okay, well, if my team's doing all right, then before everything happened, I'm like, yeah, he's a great value here. But then everything kind of happened when I trade. So I trade him away for a couple picks during the rookie draft and Tyrod Taylor since I had Deshaun Watson and everything too. So I'm like, I might as well get some value out of him now because my team might not compete till year 2 or 3. So you just got to take advantage of the opportunities when you do have them, though. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We went pretty long here. I didn't expect to go this long, but we went pretty in depth too as well.
So, yeah, we got a lot of good content we covered here, talking values and draft strategy here, and like we said, every draft's a little bit different. There's no set strategy for any format that I think you should go into. It's just playing your board and knowing the guys that you're playing with can be an advantage, and an advantage Definitely. That you should use. I know a lot of coaches, guys that he's after, and many other people that are in this draft. So it was a lot of fun to get a league like this together with a bunch of great guys in the community who you're familiar with, and it was Snipe City often in this draft.
Yeah, and that's something like I always mention, like in my videos, if I'm writing an article, like just tips for different people is just know your league, know the settings of your league, know the people that are kind of in your league too as well. It doesn't hurt like just to reach out to people, like even if you're not going to trade right away, or if you want to make a trade, it's a lot easier just to message someone and say, hey, I'm interested in this person, instead of just blindly sending an offer and then they reject it and you're like, why the heck they reject it? It's just building up communication does a whole lot more than just kind of blindly sending trade offers back and forth, especially.
Right, and that's part of it, strategy-wise too. You guys are all my friends and stuff, but every DM I send you, I'm working you just a little bit. I send you a ridiculous offer, and you scoff in my face, and then I'm like, all right, let me send you one a little something better. Then all of a sudden, while you may have thought it was a ridiculous offer as well, due to the last ridiculous offer that I sent you, this one seems a little bit more mild mannered. So there's literally a plethora of things that you can do, but communication is key. Active leagues, when the league activity really starts to die out, the league really just kind of isn't as fun anymore. So finding ways to stay active, and so that smack talking, or trying to stay trade happy, it is really what I like to do with Dynasty. It seems like the last month or so has really cooled down. Right around rookie season, we were seeing a lot of trades flying around, but people seem to be quietly sitting back and watching all the OTA reports come out before they feel confident moving anybody at this time. So I think it's going to heat back up here right around preseason. Usually trades start to kind of fire back up a little bit more.
Yeah, all the rumors, all that, and you're actually seeing it in the preseason and everything too. So it's always kind of interesting there. You always have those preseason darlings, which most of them, they don't pan out, but every once in a while you find a Victor Cruz.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it for this one. But once again, thank you for coming on, join us. Give the people, all your information, what you're working on, where they can find you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, Craig, it was an absolute pleasure breaking down this draft with you and talking a little bit of Dynasty. You can find me at Dan Brown NFL on Twitter, and you can look for some of my stuff at Dynasty Sons and at True North FFB. Got some great stuff, great content coming out here as the season is slowly approaching. It feels like it could be tomorrow, but I know it's not. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some actual NFL action again, seeing some of these guys, Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey kind of back in action after we feel like we didn't get to see enough of those elite talents this past year. So again, Craig, thank you for having me on. I hope we get to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, obviously. Thank you for coming on. You want to talk about your SOD DFS show that you got coming up too as well?
Yeah, just make sure you're following the Sons of Dynasty page, and we've been releasing a few little teasers and stuff with True North. Nate has been working on. He's become quite the graphic designer over there, so be on the lookout. And all of our content will be there, coming directly from the Sons of Dynasty page. So make sure you're following us. That's at Dynasty Sons, and we're gonna have some big stuff coming out this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be a big year for obviously Sons of Dynasty, a big year for True North as well. Obviously, they got the site relaunch coming out. I know Paul and Trav and Joe and Nate even have all been working on that too, especially moving articles over, getting the whole site built up. So that's going to be really exciting once that comes out. Are you writing much in the season, or do you have anything specific you're going to be writing about during the season?
No, I'll pretty much be, most of my content creation in season will be DFS oriented. Off season, I'm all about Dynasty and rookies, but in season, I don't really fall into the redraft content too much. I, might release a little bit here and there, just, kind of schedule oriented type stuff as far as guys to buy, after a tough stretch of schedule and whatnot. But most of my content that you're going to see this year will be DFS oriented in some form or another.
Hopefully I'm going to be able to do a little bit more DFS this year too. I did just a little bit last year as far as video content goes, but I'll definitely be doing a lot of video stuff with this too. My written stuff's going to be more looking at snap counts again, like I did last year for the site that I was writing at that point in time too. So I'll look at like 4 weeks at a time. I'll look at guys, kind of their snap counts, like how often they're on the field and the adjustments, if it's going up and down, or if it's like Mike Gesicki last year where it was like a roller coaster, like one game it'd be 60, then it'd be like 38, and then just trying to make sense out of it, because that's stuff that like a lot of people don't pay much attention to, but it's going to be really important, because if you're not on the field, you can't score points. I think that's pretty much all we got for this episode. Once again, this was a deeper dive into Dynasty. Obviously, we were with Dan Brown here. Once again, it was a pleasure having you on. I think we're going to have a couple other people that I'm going to try to have come on from True North as well, kind of talk about Dynasty, whether it was the league that we were in, kind of break it down, talk about general Dynasty strategy as well. I'm trying to get Nate to do that at some point in the future. I know he's a very, very busy guy, especially with all the writing and podcasts and everything that he's on. Probably try to get Julian on here as well. So definitely got some big plans for that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about Dynasty, some strategies, a little bit of the players that we were talking about as well. But once again, if you guys are new to my channel, please consider subscribing. Definitely would greatly appreciate it. And this is truly a channel for you, the viewers. Really try to help you guys out with your DFS, whether it's NBA or NFL. Trying to help you guys out with your fantasy football teams, covering all the different football news that I can during the off-season time. But last but not least, this is all I have for today's video. And I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day. And once again,